What are the best stretches for lower back pain? Now, before all the heroes get in comments and say, stretching's not gonna fix your lower back pain, you need to get stronger, you need to strengthen your core, rah, rah. Agreed, there's many factors that come into play for lower back pain and it needs a multifactorial approach. If you're gonna do some stretches to relieve your symptoms and help with those strategies, these are the ones I would do. Now, having said that, most people when they're doing stretches, they don't necessarily incorporate strength into that. I'm going to show you some ways that we will incorporate some strength work into our stretches and talk about a few reasons how stretching can help your lower back pain as well. So let's get into it. The first one I would do is look at something like a loaded good morning. Now, people are also going to argue this isn't a stretch, but just remember, stretching doesn't necessarily have to be sitting around on pillows and listening to crystal bowls and all that. It's also being active throughout our stretches. So if we start by coming into this sort of position, I'm going to look to hinge at my hips and stick my butt out. If you do this right, you'll start to feel your hammies loading, i.e. stretching. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to be loading back. Notice my knees aren't coming forward. We're going to go arms overhead, and we're going to look to keep our arms behind our ears as we load into this. So we're getting into our whole posterior chain here, our hammies, lower back. If we also grab some sort of weight or load, and you're not going to need much at all for this, what we're going to look to do is have our arms behind our ears. I'm going to stick my butt out, and I'm coming back, keeping those arms behind the ears. Now we're loading a lot of these muscles along our back with that weight. So I would look to do that with initially just moving through unloaded, adding some weight, and then doing some pauses at different ranges throughout. Next one I'm going to look at is getting into your lats, QL, and all of these sorts of things. Now lats are often quite implicated in lower back pain, and it's one that tends to go missed quite a lot. So if we grab onto a pole, and I'm going to have my right hand on the pole, right foot forward. I'm going to lean back. And if I'm leaning back properly here, if I was to let go of the pole, I would fall back. So I'm leaning back. And what I'm going to start to do is look under my arm. So with any stretch, we need to understand what are we trying to lengthen away from one another. Here, you'll see I'm trying to make distance between my armpit and my hip. So I'm trying to make here longer. So I come to look under my arm, pull my hip backwards. So what I'd look to do here is hold for 30 seconds, and I'm going to pull, like I'm trying to pull this pole towards me, so I'm getting a contraction through here. So my hip's moving away, hold here, and what I'm going to do is push in. I might need support with my other hand. I'm not going to move, I'm going to pull with my hand hard as I can for 5 seconds, relax for 10. So I'm going to do that for 3 rounds. 5 seconds on, 10 seconds off, 3 times. And that's our stretch for our whole kind of side body here. My next strategy would be to get a couple of balls, and some of you may have some of my special balls here, and something to rest your feet on. I'm going to look to put the balls above my rib cage, below my rib cage and above my hips. So it's not on any joints. You could argue it's kind of around this QL area here. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have these balls in that spot, feet up on something so that I can keep my hips off the ground. I would hold here for a couple of minutes. Then we might also like to move to the top of the glutes and hold here as well. Now, I've seen this be magic for some people who have been experiencing back pain for some time, so that one is really useful. I like to follow this up with some other sort of lateral stretch, possibly QL, but remember, whenever we stretch anything, we're not just stretching that thing, we're stretching regions. So sometimes it's almost irrelevant to name a muscle, but you could argue this is a QL stretch. What I'll do for this, hands are on my left knee, right elbow to the ground, and I'm looking up to the left, and I'm leaning forward here. Now I'd also look to pull myself around as I drop my right shoulder to show you what that looks like from the side, rounding forward, dropping that elbow, and looking up, and we should feel this down here. Getting into the glutes as well. So coming onto your back, left foot crossed over the right leg, and coming into this position here. My hips are flat on the ground, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull my right knee back, and I'm going to try and push my left hip to the ground. So I'll hold here, relax for 30 seconds. Then as hard as I can, I'm going to look to try and push my left hip to the ground. Again, 5 to 10 seconds, relax. We'll do that 3 times. Now, some people would ask, and they see that I do love this stretch of 90-90, why I wouldn't do this here. Sometimes if you have lower back pain, this can be quite irritable in terms of the torsion around your lower back. So I tend to err towards something more where we can keep our pelvis level on the ground here. From here, I'd look to go into a position where I'm dropping my left foot on the ground, and I'm going to draw my left knee over. And again, I'm going to create this traction tension by pushing my knee and my hand in towards each other for a few reps of 5 to 10 seconds. We also want to make sure part of the strategy in using stretching for helping lower back pain is restoring good pelvis movement. So for instance, looking at posterior anterior tilt of the pelvis here on your back, looking to create an arch and then flatten the back to the ground. Now you might even like to test your pelvis movements and see, what am I like anterior posterior tilt? Can I shift equally across both sides? Can I hike? And can I rotate? So good strategies utilizing stretching for lower back pain will ensure that these movements are all in check. Now the reason they might not be is you might be avoiding moving your hip across because you're avoiding loading your right foot, for example. So whilst stretching the adductors or whatever may help in terms of getting this hip over here, we also need to do some gait re-education and these sorts of things, and that's a whole other strategy that is way too complex and long to go into in a simple video, where I just wanted to give you some 5 or so ideas around how you should be utilizing stretching for lower back pain. So if you've got any questions, please ask. Remember, this is video 3 of 100 questions that I'm being asked. If you have your own question to ask, please make sure you send that to me. If you'd like to subscribe to these videos, I also send these out in an email with a bunch of other strategies included. There's a link here somewhere. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one.